When we look at the current situation surrounding Greenland and the threats coming from the Trump administration toward European allies, we must discard all liberal rhetoric about values, rules, and international law. If we truly want to understand what is happening, we must view the world through the lens of realism. In international politics, there is no supreme authority, no world government capable of protecting the weak from the strong. We live in a condition of anarchy. Within this system, states, especially great powers, behave as rational actors seeking survival and the maximization of their security. What we are witnessing today in relations between the United States, Denmark, and the European Union is a textbook example of how a great power projects its interests onto strategically vital regions, and how its dependent allies, trapped by their reliance, attempt to find any leverage in response. Let us begin with a fundamental fact. Greenland has enormous strategic importance for the United States. In Trump's logic, and here he is absolutely correct from the standpoint of American national interests, Greenland is not just a block of ice or an autonomous Danish territory. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Arctic. In a world where great power rivalry has returned to the forefront, control over the Arctic region is becoming critically important. We see Russia increasing its military presence there. We see China declaring itself a near-Arctic state. For the United States, allowing rival influence in Greenland or leaving its security in the hands of small Denmark is a strategic risk Washington is no longer willing to tolerate. When Trump talks about the Golden Dome missile defense system and calls Greenland essential for national security, he is speaking the language of power. His threat to impose 10% tariffs from February 1st and raise them to 25% by June 1st is not merely a trade war, it is a tool of coercion. In realism, economics is simply the continuation of politics by other means. He is using America's economic power to force Denmark and its European partners to submit to Washington's strategic dictates. Notice that his targets are not only Denmark, but also Germany, France, the United Kingdom, the entire backbone of the European economy. He understands that Europe is deeply integrated into the American security and trade system, and he strikes at its most vulnerable point. The European response reported by the media, emergency meetings in Brussels, discussions about counter-coercion tools, looks, frankly, rather weak. When European officials talk about restricting U.S. access to military bases such as Ramstein in Germany, they are playing with fire. This is what international relations theory calls a security dilemma. If Europe truly takes such a step, it would effectively mean the end of NATO as we know it. The United States is present in Europe not out of altruism. We are there because it allows us to project power into the Middle East, Africa, and now the Arctic. If this access is restricted, Washington will reasonably ask, why should we protect Europe at all? Trump understands this asymmetry. When he says Denmark can do nothing if Russia or China decide to occupy Greenland, he is stating the obvious. Denmark's military potential in the Arctic is, as he put it, a couple of dog sleds. In terms of hard power, Denmark is a strategic dwarf. And when a dwarf controls territory vital to a giant, conflict is inevitable. Realism teaches us that sovereignty is not sacred if you lack the power to defend it. For Trump, Danish sovereignty over Greenland is an annoying historical formality that obstructs American security. Now look at France. Emmanuel Macron and other French leaders openly talk about leaving NATO or pursuing strategic autonomy. This is a natural reaction. When the leading state in an alliance behaves like a predator toward its allies, those allies seek ways to hedge risks. But here lies Europe's problem. Strategic autonomy costs enormous money. To create an army capable of replacing the American presence and defending territories like Greenland, Europe would have to radically restructure budgets, cut social spending, and become a military power it has not been since World War II. Under current economic conditions and domestic political pressure in each EU state, this is practically impossible. Therefore, exercises like Arctic Endurance, where 15 French mountain specialists train in Greenland, are pure symbolism. 15 people will not stop the United States if it decides to act. This is classic balancing, but very weak balancing. Europe is trying to show the flag, hoping Washington will return to traditional diplomacy, but Trump is not a traditional politician. He thinks in terms of deals and dominance. This crisis exposes cracks within NATO itself. The alliance rests on trust that the leader will respect junior partners' interests, but when the leader says, "I need your territory for my Golden Dome, and if you don't give it, I will destroy your trade," trust evaporates. We are witnessing a return to multipolar logic even within the Western Bloc. France has always been NATO's most skeptical member regarding American dominance. Now its arguments that NATO is an instrument of American imperialism are gaining resonance even in Berlin. Yet we must not forget U.S. domestic politics. Polls showing low support for buying Greenland and bipartisan delegations visiting Copenhagen to support Denmark indicate serious divisions within the American establishment. But in the U.S. system, the president has enormous authority, especially in national security and tariffs. Trump is using his powers to change the status quo. The Greenland issue is not only about territory, it is about what the world order in the 21st century will look like. If the United States achieves its goals through coercion, it will send a signal worldwide. Old alliance rules no longer work. Every state is on its own. If Denmark, a NATO ally that fought alongside America in Afghanistan, faces such pressure, what does this say about others' security? It pushes small and medium powers to seek new patrons or form their own blocs. But let us be honest. Europe has no good options. If they respond with sanctions, they accelerate U.S. withdrawal from Europe, something Brussels fears above all. Without the American security umbrella, Europe becomes vulnerable. If they submit, they lose remaining sovereignty and become vassals of Washington. This tragic choice reflects the nature of international politics. Trump mentions Venezuela to show America's readiness to act. It signals the administration's willingness to use force or threats in its zone of interest. For Washington, the Arctic is as much a zone of interest as the Caribbean. Rhetoric that Greenland is not for sale collides with historical reality. Territories often changed hands under pressure, force, or money. Ultimately, we see a clash of two worldviews. The European one is based on legal norms, autonomy, and consensus. The American one under Trump is based on brute force, geography, and strategic dominance. As a realist, I can tell you that in the long run, geography and power usually defeat norms and rules. Greenland lies in the Western Hemisphere. It is vital for North American defense. The United States will not let this situation remain unresolved forever. Tensions will only grow. February 1st will be a moment of truth. If tariffs take effect, we will witness the beginning of a full-scale transatlantic rupture. Europe may discuss countermeasures endlessly, but dependence on the American market and security limits their maneuvering. Trump knows this. He plays a high-stakes game because he believes he holds all the cards. Given the military and economic balance, it is hard to say he is wrong. Europe must decide if it is ready to pay the price for independence. Trillions of euros for defense, potential rupture with the U.S. market, and responsibility for its own security. So far, we see no readiness to pay such a price. Only attempts to stall and symbolic gestures. But in the Arctic, where ice melts and new routes open for great power rivalry, time is a resource Europe may not have. The Greenland situation is not a temporary misunderstanding between friends. It is a tectonic geopolitical shift. It marks the end of an era when the United States viewed European allies as equals. Now they are seen as assets or obstacles to American dominance. Denmark and Greenland lie directly on this fault line. In a world of renewed great power competition, small states suffer, especially if they possess what giants need. In conclusion, we are entering a period of deep instability in transatlantic relations. Trump's logic is pure realism. Security above all, power defines rights, and allies matter only while they serve interests. Europe resists using its remaining economic influence, but without military parity, this resistance looks doomed. Greenland is only the first episode in a new Arctic power game. The United States has made clear it will stop at nothing to secure control, whether by economically strangling Denmark or undermining European unity. If NATO collapses in the process, Trump may see it as an acceptable price for the Golden Dome and Northern dominance. This is a harsh, cynical, but rational great power approach. Europeans, if they want to survive as independent players, must stop hoping for a return to old times and start seeing the world as cynically as Washington does. The world is changing, and those who cannot adapt to power politics will be left behind. Greenland is Europe's test. So far, Europe seems to be failing, lacking unity and resources to defend sovereignty against a determined hegemon. We will watch this process unfold, but the direction is set toward a more fragmented and dangerous world where great power security interests dictate terms to everyone else.